I used to be a big break taker during longer tattoos. So I worked for like an hour or maybe even a half hour sometimes. And I would have to take a break. I'm getting too antsy. I can't pay attention. I can't focus on what I'm doing anymore. I gotta get up. I gotta go smoke and come back and then get back to it. But then even then it's like the longer that session goes, the longer I'm still working on the same thing. It's almost like the more often I felt like I had to take breaks, and I had to, eventually I was able to force through it. But it's always been a struggle. It's been something I've had to be mindful of and been like, okay, it's only been 30 minutes. You can keep going and get through this tattoo faster. So your client is happy and you're not eating up as much of your day.
Are you taking ADHD medication?
I am now, yes.
And how has that changed for you since you've been taking medication?
Massive change.
ADHD Rewired, episode 313. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. And you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Jordan Marsh. Jordan is a semi-self-employed professional tattoo artist and single parent. He has been diagnosed for about 2 years and is just now learning about how profoundly his ADHD has affected his life and his relationships. In fact, it may be the reason why he pursued tattooing instead of a more conventional career. Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. So you were diagnosed about 2 years ago. You are a single dad. I wasn't sure if the semi-self-employed professional tattoo, was it like you're semi-professional or you're semi-self-employed?
I try to be as fully professional as I can be. No, it's a weird thing because like we're subcontractors, but also I'm kind of an employee. Like we don't get 1099s or anything, but still gotta follow the boss's rules. It's a weird model when it comes to tattooing. It's fun.
All right. And because this is a podcast and you aren't seeing it, Jordan has lots of tattoos, including, you can see some on his neck, including one on his face, on his eyebrows. So he's got a lot of artwork all over his body. Yeah.
My hair's a little grown out too, but I've also got the, pretty much most of my head.
Wow. Okay. All right. What got you into tattooing?
Well, back in high school, I had like literally no direction of where I wanted to go in life. And I just knew I wanted to do something in art because I've been drawing as long as I can remember. I was, big surprise, 6 credits behind in my senior year of high school. There was like, after school stuff and other like at home classes I could take. And so I chose to do those. My dad said that, trying to give me some sort of a motivation. He said that he would pay for my first tattoo and take me to get it if I could graduate on time. So I made up all 6 credits and was able to graduate on time with a core 40 as well. We went and got the first one after.
What was it?
It was a very small, like kind of stylized J that I used to draw.
Okay.
It's on my chest. It's, I don't know, maybe like 2 by 3 inches.
Okay.
But mostly covered up now by a much bigger piece.
Covered up by other tattoos, sort of like the paperwork on my desk is covered up by other piles on my desk.
Yeah. I've got a lot of other tattoos for sure. but yeah, we went to get the first one, and like he actually put the idea in my head. He was just like, you could totally do that, and that's what made me pursue it. All my, like when I went to college, all my projects and papers, if I could make it about tattooing, I did.
Oh, really? What did you find that tattooing kind of did for you?
I don't know. It was just sort of something that I was able to zone in on, something that focused me. It was, very, I don't know, it's just kind of a weird thing. And it's, involves, self-expression in one of the most extreme forms. And that was always very attractive to me. I was always kind of a sort of rebellious teenager, I guess, but also, I don't know, not rebellious in the typical ways, I guess. But I definitely, I wanted to grow my hair long and like wear baggy pants, chains and stuff. And so
here's a confession that I might not have ever said on the podcast before. Now I have mentioned before that when, I was in college, I had dreadlocks. But I don't think I ever shared that when I was in high school, I sported a chain wallet. Yep.
Nice.
Now it's out there.
Yeah, I think I just listened to an episode of the podcast where you had mentioned that you had dreadlocks. I actually used to have dreadlocks up until like a year and a half ago. About a year. But I had them for like 7 years.
Nice. So before we hit record, we were kind of talking about how over the, even up to recently, but how you've really been looking at some of the more painful experiences that you've had in your life and have really been focusing on the learning that you can take from that pain, and kind of drawing an immediate parallel here to you expressing your creative self through something that, as a delivery mechanism can be considered kind of painful, getting a tattoo or giving a tattoo. So help kind of explain that connection for you between pain and expression.
I don't know, pain is a very intimate thing, especially in the context of tattooing between the tattooer and the tattooee. It is a very intimate connection, like the only other professions where you're having that intimate of a connection with your, with the clients or customers or whatever is like doctor or, hairstylist or barber, things.
Massage therapist, maybe.
Yeah. Massage therapist. That'd definitely be another one. But then with tattooing, we're, all those things also, you're not necessarily leaving something permanent behind. Whereas like, after someone leaves my chair, they're physically changed for the rest of their life. And it's kind of a very profound thing, but,
it's funny. I'm not opposed to getting a tattoo, but because like big decisions are always something I wrestle with. I'm like, you can't go back. I mean, like, I guess technically you can have a surgery to have it removed, but even that leaves a mark. And, so I think probably just because of my indecisiveness of something that's permanent, I probably won't ever get a tattoo. But maybe who knows? But, what do you think people don't understand about tattooing?
A lot. Everybody has a surface level understanding of it, and even like people that get tattooed, and people that get tattooed a lot, they end up getting a pretty good understanding for it because they're spending hours on end in the shop. I don't know, the general public, I guess they sort of tend to assume they know more than is, and this is kind of a constant throughout the tattoo community, is that the tattoo TV shows have like ruined tattooing or whatever, and it's not underground anymore, and it's a very popular opinion, and even among those of us that are not that don't hold that same opinion, it still has some influence in your thought process to some degree, and it's not so common anymore, but like back when I first started, I'd definitely get people coming in like, oh, I watch LA Ink all the time, and da, 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 da. And like it'd be like the friend of the person getting tattooed, and they'd be like just hovering over me, like, oh well, you know, on the show I saw this, or like when my friend was getting their tattoo, they did this, and this, and it's like, okay, well, this is a different shop. This is me tattooing, not Kat Bundy, or not your friend that tattoos out of his house, or whatever.
So, as a form of expression, you know, there, I think there's probably a lot of people who have tattoos that you would be totally surprised that have tattoos.
Absolutely.
You can't really hide your tattoos. You have a tattoo on your face. Tell me about that. What does that mean for you?
Well, for one, honestly, this is probably another big reason why I started getting tattooed, is it does, tattoos are kind of almost a form of armor, like social armor.
Yeah.
And in ancient times when, you know, tattooing was used as that, it was like spiritual armor against, you know, evil spirits or demons or whatever the tradition was of that particular area or culture. And I think they very much still are, because especially in, I don't know, just like when I'm going out and about, I definitely get a lot of strange looks. Most of them I'm able to tune out. Like I don't even notice it half the time anyway, unless I'm out with someone and they point it out to me, like they were staring you down. Sometimes it's a little more blatant. But also,
how does that feel for you?
It honestly doesn't really bother me. If I'm out with my son and someone is like making a show of it, or they approach me in a negative way, then that bothers me.
Has that happened?
Honestly, no. It has happened with, I know it's happened with my ex-wife when she was out with my kid. She's, you know, got a fair amount of tattoos, and like with my most recent ex-girlfriend when she's been out with them. People are much more likely to approach heavily tattooed women than heavily tattooed men, in my experience.
Why do you think that is?
I think that the most immediate association is that you see a heavily tattooed guy, you think he's a badass, like he's crazy. You don't want to, he will hurt you. And I think that comes out of biker culture. And then if you see a heavily tattooed woman, a lot of the time it's, you know, it has more of a Christian Grey 50 Shades kind of a connotation to it. Like, oh, she must be a freak. And it's very annoying and frustrating for those of us that are heavily tattooed, because it's nothing's ever that black and white. You know, everybody is a unique individual, and you know, our tattoos do show that. But
so you mentioned your son, right?
Yep.
How old is he?
He's 6.
He's 6 years old. So you're 29, so you were kind of a young dad to begin with.
Yep.
And you have still custody of your son. How is that? Like, how just being a dad, self-employed? Talk to me about some of the challenges and things that you're kind of maybe even learning about yourself through what I think is the hardest job in the world, and that's being a parent.
Yeah, no, it is difficult for sure, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's 100% worth it. I think most parents, hopefully any parent will say that. But yeah, there's a lot of difficulties, especially with my schedule, because, you know, tattoo shops, there's very rarely a tattoo shop that opens any earlier than noon. And then usually most shops, and like I work until 9 every day. And so, and now that, especially now that he's in school, you know, yes, he has to wake up for school at 7, like to get ready and then get there on time. And, you know, so like I have to wake up early enough with him, which means I have to go to bed at a decent hour, which almost never happens. And, I've been working on that though. But yeah, there's definitely times that we don't get as much time together on certain days, because like now he can't wait up for me until I get home and have that staggered sleep schedule like he used to when he was just going to daycare.
And your son is also diagnosed?
Yeah.
Okay. And so ADHD dad, parenting an ADHD kid, which I very much relate to. It's, are there parts of that are fun for you? Like where it kind of interacts in a way that kind of works?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially now that I've been educating myself on like how it works, just how it works in the brain and everything. There's definitely ways that, we play off of each other, and it's very enjoyable. We get along great. We have a lot of fun together. It can get difficult when we're both having issues with the emotional dysregulation. And typically, that's sometimes I'm just having an off day and I'll start it. But then a lot of time it's, he doesn't understand something. He's a kid. He doesn't know how to express himself, so like he gets frustrated and his, emotions get heightened, and, he gets real stubborn. He gets real, he can get real defiant too, especially if like he doesn't fully understand a concept. And so, he starts escalating, and especially if it's like, if it's like this, disrespectful, it can make me, jump to escalating, but like, I always have to try and reel myself back in, and, it's, which I think I've gotten pretty good at doing.
What do you think has attributed to helping you do that?
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
Definitely.
As like an active practice, like a meditation practice.
I'm not as great at keeping a regular meditation practice, but I do try and stay pretty mindful. And just a quick connection, mindfulness and tattooing, I think, correlate pretty well, because nothing gets you, 100% in the moment like pain. And, especially if you're sitting there for multiple hours getting, something etched into your skin, you get very in tune with how your body is feeling, how it's reacting, everything that's happening. And not to mention the endorphins.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But I started sort of like mindfulness and meditation and stuff like that way before I was even diagnosed. I had a big interest in, Buddhism and other Eastern religions, and I just did a lot of study in that. And, I've done fair amounts of yoga and meditation, and just, my own personal interest. And I wouldn't say I'm practicing any religion really, but there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of truth that's very useful from a lot of different sources. So, yeah.
Let's do this. I want to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about sort of how your work and your creativity is kind of impacted with your ADHD, and how ADHD impacts your work and creativity. So we will be right back.
ADHD reWired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups is going into its 20th season of coaching groups. And as of this recording, which I'm doing Friday evening, we still have 2 spots left for our spring season of coaching and accountability groups that starts April 8th. Thank you for everyone who signed up. If you've been thinking about signing up, head on over to our coaching page over at coachingrewired.com to check the status to see if we have any spots left. This is a 10-week session that meets virtually on Zoom every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for an hour. And now, with everything going on in the world with the coronavirus, there's never been a better time to consider an online coaching group. Go to coachingrewired.com to learn more. And if you are interested in being added to our summer coaching session interest list, go there and click the big blue button. These intense coaching groups could be exactly what you are looking for. Sandy found it here. Listen as she tells her story.
I decided to join the group because I realized that there was a lot about my ADHD that medicine wasn't going to help me with. It's funny getting a diagnosis of something, but you don't really get a lot of tools from the medical community on really how to move forward and how to work on things more. Like they were like, all right, here's your prescription. And I said, okay, is this gonna make my life like so much better? They're like, well, kind of. I didn't know what else to do, and I wasn't prepared for that. And so I just started researching and trying to figure out, like, how do I work this out now? How do I learn what I need to learn to function in the ways that I really need to function? I felt like I only had half the story. It was super valuable to me. I found the podcast and I found the website and I signed up, and I had no idea what I was going to learn, but I know that I get a lot out of talking to other people and sharing with other people, and, you know, just being in a community in which people can advise based on true lived experience. And that is exactly what I found. That's really what I think what I needed, because there's no one else in my life who, if they have ADHD, has opened up about it. And I feel so much more able to open up about mine too, to be more comfortable saying, like, hey, like, this has been my experience and these are the things that have helped me, and here are some great tools. And I've learned in this group just that you can go really far when you allow yourself to be vulnerable. And we all kind of had to talk about our real stories in here. And this is a place in which that's never going to go against you. That is only going to help you. And it's been just a real turning point and joy to understand the ways that I can improve my life through so many things that I didn't even know I could do.
How far do you want to go? Vulnerability can open doors to so much. So go to coachingrewired.com to be added to our summer coaching session list, because registration is by invitation only. So go to coachingrewired.com to be added to our summer coaching invitation list, or to possibly join us for this season, our spring session of coaching and accountability groups. Check the website to see if we have any spots left. The website again is coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. I appreciate all the patrons who help make this podcast possible with your monthly contributions. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I have a library of over 300 podcasts for you, and I hope you really consider becoming a patron. Go to ADHDrewired.com and click the Patreon tab at the top. Join by picking a dollar amount that is right for you. I just posted the March Q&A on the Patreon page, and you can view it now, which also includes extra content that won't be heard on the podcast. And you can get that for just $5 a month. For those who can give at the $25 a month level, you can join our monthly coaching call. Our next group coaching call will be on Tuesday, March 24th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. That's Tuesday, March 24th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I am grateful for every patron who gives what they can. And if you're not in a place to give, you can support the podcast in a non-monetary way by sharing it with someone you know, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're brand new to the podcast, I really want to welcome you and I appreciate you. And go ahead and just listen for a few weeks or even a little longer to decide how much value you are getting from this podcast. And if you find that you are getting a lot of value from it and you are able to, let me know how much you value it by becoming a patron. Go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks.
We are back. When we spoke a few weeks ago, Jordan, you said to me that your job is the most terrible, perfect job. What did you mean by that?
It's perfect. It's because it's very, I get to draw on people for a living. Like, I sit at work, I draw on people. If I'm not drawing on people, I'm either drawing in my sketchbook or just screwing around, talking with friends, or I can bring in my Nintendo Switch and sit there and play video games all day if I want. Granted, I'm not getting paid if I'm doing that, because it's strictly, just you get paid for the tattoos you do. So I can sit there all day and make no money, but then I can also bring home, $1,000 in a week, or, in a day even. And
really?
Yeah.
What is your, I don't know if you know this from just as a profession, what's the earning potential for a tattoo artist?
Honestly, I have no idea. Math is not my strong suit.
Fair enough. Okay. But you said it's also terrible, like the most terrible, perfect job.
Yeah, because it can be, it's challenging in a lot of good ways, but also very forgiving. And I think that the forgiving part is definitely a double-edged sword.
Forgiving it in what way?
You can get away with showing up late a lot, which is very good because I'm late a lot, but also with there being no consequences for that, there's no motivation to
I totally get that. Yep.
Yeah. And, like I can, you can, like, a lot of tattooers, they stagnate. They'll, they get to where they're proficient enough. They're good enough. They can execute a solid tattoo. You can do anything that walks in the door, and they just stay there. They're paying the bills, and they have a not super demanding job. And so like they chill, but they also then there's no self improvement over so many years. And I was definitely in that boat for a number of years when I was still at my first shop. And eventually, I kind of made that realization, and I was like, something's got to change. And so I left that shop. I tried to do on as best terms as possible because, I've got no bad blood or anything, which is kind of uncommon in tattooing. But yeah, I went to another shop. I worked there for about a year. Great boss, had a great time there. That was all good. And then I just got another opportunity that was, better. I have a much longer commute now, but I'm making much, I'm doing much better where I'm at now. And yeah, it's definitely sparked a lot of drive to improve.
So with your diagnosis about 2 years ago, and the strive to improve, what are some of the things that you've been kind of discovering? Maybe first talk about your work process and how it shows up for you in work. What have you been kind of really like discovering about yourself that you've been working on?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is that I used to be a big break taker during longer tattoos. So I worked for like an hour or maybe even a half hour sometimes, and I would have to take a break. I'm getting too antsy. I can't pay attention. I can't focus on what I'm doing anymore. I gotta get up. I gotta go smoke and come back and then get back to it. But then even then, it's like the longer that session goes, the longer I'm still working on the same thing. It's almost like the more often I felt like I had to take breaks, and I had to, eventually I was able to, force through it. But it's always been a struggle. It's been something I've had to be mindful of and been like, okay, it's only been 30 minutes. You can keep going and get through this tattoo faster. So your client is happy and you're not eating up as much of your day.
And are you taking ADHD medication?
I am now. Yes.
And how has that changed for you since you've been taking medication?
Massive change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I definitely had that typical, oh, this is what normal's like moment, and yeah, now I can, like, when I first started it, I noticed that, oh, I can actually sit for 2 hours straight and tattoo without needing a break. Granted, at 2 hours, that's when you need a break physically. You need it for your body, and usually your client does too. You get sit in the same position, back gets sore, you get stiff, you got to stretch your knees, all that stuff. Tattooers are notorious for getting terrible back problems.
So with the medication, you found you were able to focus a lot better and for longer duration of time. I've always been curious. You always see these like pictures of people who got like really bad tattoos or like or like someone made a mistake in the tattoo. Have you ever made a mistake on a tattoo? Really? Can you share one?
Okay.
We'll just say it was a long time ago and you learned your lesson from it.
You always learn your lesson. No, it's actually, there's something I was told when I was still an apprentice. Every tattoo has mistakes in it. The measure of how good you are is how you hide them. Yeah, fun story about the one that comes immediately to mind. That was the most public one because it was a kind of celebrity, I guess.
Okay.
I tattooed someone that was on Teen Mom, and she came in, got it done. We had a good experience. It was just a word, but it was a word in Italian, I think. And I'm not bilingual, so I'm relying on the client at that point. she made a mistake in the spelling or the syntax or something, or the punctuation, apostrophe, whatever it was.
Okay.
And so, she left. She was super happy with it, posted on her Twitter, and her however many million followers from when she was on TV were like, that's wrong. That's not, that's not how that word works. And of course,
my God,
my name's attached to that, because like all you have is your name and word of mouth and tattooing, really, when it comes down to it.
So in your industry, whose fault would that generally be considered?
Oh, absolutely the client.
Now, have you had someone after that come in with like a word or something you didn't know, and have you approached it differently? Not
a whole lot differently. I will definitely make them very aware. Like, look, I do not speak this language. If this is wrong, that is your responsibility.
So you do say that, okay?
Yeah, like I make sure they understand, like, you're the one that's liable for this.
Like, are you did you double check this with somebody else who actually speaks this language?
Yeah, and I just had this the other day. Actually, there was a girl that came in and she was wanting kanji symbols.
And what is? I don't even know what that is. Kanji symbols.
Oh, just like either like Japanese.
Okay.
But she wanted like some certain word written in a Chinese symbol. And then she was pulling up the symbol, but it was the Japanese kanji symbol. And I only know that because it was the symbol for love, and I've tattooed it a million times. And so like she showed me like 3 different ones for like different words. And, this one was one language, this one was another language. And I know that like you can miss one little line and it means a completely different thing in that language. And I ran through all that with her, and I was like, look, if you don't speak this language, I don't speak this language, you should really find someone that speaks this. Like, go to a Chinese restaurant or something and find someone that does speak it and have them proofread it, essentially. And she was just not hearing any of it. Pulled up these Google images of what she thinks is what it was. It's probably pretty close, at least. But yeah, so she wanted it done right then and there. So like, all right, let's tattoo this on your neck.
Did you then give her like maybe a card or referral to like your local ADHD specialist? I guess might be a little impulsive. Like, it's funny. I think that that when you have a diagnosis like ADHD, there is a tendency for a lot of people with ADHD to start like diagnosing everyone they see. Do you think you see that a lot of ADHD come through the tattoo parlor?
Yeah. I probably don't pay as much in my clients. I try not to make too many judgments. Especially new clients that I'm meeting for the first time. Ones I've known for a long time, that's a little different. But like, I've definitely done that. Like, I'm constantly thinking, oh, these behaviors of like this friend or this family member, like, they probably have ADHD. And granted, it's probably more likely in the family member category. But I'm like constantly, I don't know. It's like I want to reach out because I'm like, if you're struggling with this, I want to help, but also I don't want to like violate your level of comfort or your boundaries or anything. So just keep my mouth shut a little bit, I guess.
Do you have any tattoos that you personally have that you regret getting?
Plenty.
Really?
A lot, honestly, probably most of them. Really?
Okay. That's so fascinating to me. Tell me, so, how do you, cause you see it every day in the mirror, like what's the story that you kind of are telling yourself when you see those?
That I'll fix it eventually.
So it's like an undone project.
Yeah. I got a lot of works in progress. No, I got a lot of my tattoos really early on in, like when I was still an apprentice. Cause like my mentor, he was very, early on in his tattoo career as well. He actually is also diagnosed with ADHD. But yeah, he was like, maybe, I don't know, he's like 3 years in or something like that. And, teaching me. And so he would find something. He's like, oh, I want to try this. Let me tattoo this on you. I'm like, okay. And now after, kind of finding my style, like the artwork that I really like, the stuff that I'm really passionate about. And I've got like concrete ideas for what I want on every part of my body pretty much now. And there's a lot of like prime real estate that's kind of taken up at this point. So I'm working on slowly getting things lasered and lightened enough to where we can cover them with what I really want.
Wow.
Because a lot you can probably cover up, but you're limited depending on how dark it is, how intricate it is, because like cover-ups are not hard at all. I do tons of cover-ups.
And a tattoo is not like paint where you can just like paint over a couple coats. Like it doesn't work that way, I would imagine, right?
It kind of does, but it kind of doesn't. You can paint over areas, but it has to be with something darker. Or if it is going to be lighter, it has to be not too much. It has to be, because like I've definitely covered up old faded black with like a bright red and it works great. But that red is not going to look the same as that red would on fresh skin. So you got to be mindful of that in your color selection. Color always works better for cover-ups, by the way. Black and gray can if you're doing opaque grays and not gray wash. There's a big difference there. But I won't get too far into it.
I'm always like fascinated about like just like hearing like the sort of the intricacies of things that I really know nothing about. And I think it's fun just to hear people talk about things that they are passionate about. That's
the same reason I listen to podcasts all day long.
So let's do this. So looking at time, let's take one more quick break. I want to, when we come back, kind of bring our attention to talking about the impact that ADHD has had on relationships in your life. All right, we will be right back.
Last week during our live Q&A, we had a listener that wanted help with their challenge they had with being late. We came up with lots of suggestions for them, and you'll hear it next month on the podcast. If you haven't joined us, why don't you join us and ask your own question? Join me and the host of ADHD Essentials, Brendan Mahan, and the host of Hacking Your ADHD, Will Curb, every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. Registration is free at adhdrewired.com/events. Our next live Q&A is on Tuesday, April 14th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Don't be late, but if you are, don't worry. We'll see you when you get there. Also, ADHD Rewired just hit its 6-year anniversary of podcasting. And because ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast, we are a community. I want to invite you to be a part of a special 6-year anniversary episode. And yes, technically the 6-year anniversary already passed, but it wouldn't be an ADHD podcast if we did it on time, right? So come hang out with us and other listeners and community members and share with us how ADHD Rewired has helped you. This is an opportunity for you to share your story on the podcast. We're going to do this on April 1st. That's April Fool's Day. I don't know if April Fool's Day is an international thing, but it's April 1st, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. To find out how you can join us on Zoom for this special event, go to adhdrewired.com/events. That's adhdrewired.com/events. We hope to see you there.
All right. We are back with Jordan Marsh, and let's talk about relationships and how that has impacted you. And I think we were talking right before we hit record that you're really seeing a lot of stuff in hindsight and how ADHD has impacted you and your relationships.
Yeah. Hindsight's definitely been 2020. I don't know. There's just and of course, being put on the spot now, I can't think of a ton of great examples. But everything that I've been saying is about like the different, just the little symptoms that the general public doesn't know is paired with ADHD. Especially like emotional dysregulation, that affecting relationships or overthinking things and just
how does emotional dysregulation in relationships that you've had, how does that show up for you? Maybe you can give an example of something.
Best example would be like, say someone comes to me with hey, there's this thing, like you did this, or this situation was handled poorly, and I'm like, my perception of the situation was completely different than what they're saying, and so then I'm like, I respond with, well, no, but this is what I meant, and then they stay with their relaying their perception, and they're like, okay, you may have meant that, but this is how it actually came across, and it's definitely been hard for me in the past to recognize that. And, frustration can amp up, and even, anger or things like that. And then like something that should have been just a healthy discussion, and communication turns into an argument or a fight.
So when you're given that feedback of something that you perceive differently, where do you feel that in your body?
Probably right in my chest.
And does it feel pretty intense?
It can. Yeah. I've definitely, especially like, as of late, I've been working on getting a handle on it and being able to reel that back, or at least notice when that dysregulation is amping up so much, so I can be like, I'm not in the right headspace right now. I need to walk away, and we can come back to this at another time.
And is that generally well received when you're in those situations? Depends.
Depends on how far it gets. Because if the argument portion has progressed too far, it can definitely just be like not great, and then not come back to things. But
and you've been in relationships since you've learned you've had ADHD. So the mother of your son, that was a earlier relationship. How old were you when you met her?
Oh, geez. Probably like 19 or 20.
Okay. Then you had obviously a child together. And then when did you guys separate?
After because we were together for like 2 years before we got married, and then we were married 2 years, and then divorced. So 2014. Yeah.
Okay. But at that point, you still didn't know you had ADHD.
No, I mean, I've kind of had a suspicion for a long time.
Okay.
Like there's friends or just acquaintances or whatever would be like, you probably, you totally got ADHD, but like kind of in a pejorative, joking kind of a thing. But, after hearing it so many times for so long, I was like, I probably do have this. And then even then, when I kind of came to, had that thought, it was still like 5-6 years before I actually pursued a real diagnosis. And
it's amazing how common that is. It really is. Yeah. People hearing about it, people thinking about it, and then like it just, so many times in their life, like I maybe should look into that. And then they don't, and then something else happens in their life. They're like, I maybe should look into that. And, rinse and repeat so many times until something happens where you're like, I have to look into this.
Yeah. Well, and what honestly, it wasn't even the ADHD that really pushed me to get that diagnosis eventually. Like that was always a thing when I went in there.
Okay.
But it was the depression that really made me seek a diagnosis, because there had definitely been times in the past where I would just be useless for months. It was, not only was it just draining and it sucked going through that, but, just my relationships and my life in general would just be put on pause, basically, as I, hermited myself away.
You, I think you said you recently ended a relationship with the next girlfriend now, but you still have a good relationship with her? Yeah.
We've actually still got a very good relationship now.
And how would you say that ADHD has shown up in that relationship?
In every way.
Every way.
It would just, being late, like she's very punctual. And so that was always a struggle. just my own stubbornness and forgetfulness. Like, I made her cry multiple times because I could not remember her birthday, and I don't ever remember anyone's birthday, barely mine. I only remember like mine, probably just because it's mine. I remember my son's because it was on a very notable day in history, September 11th. So those are like some of the few birthdays I can remember, and I just could never remember her birthday. And there's a lot of things like that kind of, a lot of strains. And then topics that were mentioned in like Jessica McCabe's channel, like her videos on relationships, of like getting bored, not trying, not putting in the effort. Mm-hmm. That was a big drain on the relationship. And ultimately what ended it, that wasn't like the final thing that ended it, but there was like a final, like this is the last straw kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But been coming to a head for quite some time.
What do you think that you have been learning about yourself as a result of going through relationships, knowing now that you have ADHD?
That managing my ADHD can positively impact my relationships with people much better. Because I'm not disappointing people. 2, I'm not, feeling the self disappointment of disappointing people as much. And also that, that resilience that we talk about, and giving yourself a break. That's ever since finding like How to ADHD and your podcast, and really educating myself about ADHD. It's once I came to that acceptance that this is part of me. I have this. There's no fighting it. It's something I have to live with and work with. It was actually very much a relief, because I'm like, okay, I'm not just a piece of shit. Yeah. I have something that I need to work with and overcome.
Yeah, you had mentioned the disappointing people. I think that's one of the unintentionally disappointing people. I think it can be one of the most discouraging kind of parts of having ADHD. Cause it's one thing to disappoint someone with bad news, like, but you're being direct about it, like, and you understand their disappointment. It's the stuff that like you didn't mean to have happen.
Yeah.
That's hard. It really is. And I think that it requires having a lot of self-compassion and self-forgiveness. But at the same time, like really continuing to try to work on these things to improve, kind of how we show up in the world. Cause it will make us feel better. It's not just for other people. We feel better when we are putting the self out there in the world that we want to be putting out there. The closer we get from putting intention into action, the better we feel just about ourselves in general.
Absolutely. It's a whole different, like, just existence, Yeah. And that not being enough, that always falling short kind of thing, that again, that also fed into my depression very bad, and that poor self-image. And I'm, slowly digging myself out of 29 years of that.
Do you think a lot of that depression was just like not knowing that you had ADHD, or do you think it's also coexisting clinical depression?
I definitely have a seasonal affective
disorder. Yeah.
Yes, seasonal affective disorder. And so like, because my depression always got worse in the winter.
Yeah, mine too. I struggle with that too.
Yeah, it still does to a degree, but like, and like I said, my medication, I'm on Wellbutrin and Adderall, and that has helped immensely. And what was I just saying?
You totally had that look on your face of like, I forgot the rest of that thought. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's where we should end. It was something about, there's cliffhangers, and then there's just I have no idea what I was about to say. The unintentional cliffhanger.
Yeah. And that's ADHD.
So Jordan, do you think that as you're continuing to learn about yourself and how ADHD has impacted your relationships, that this will also change the way you pursue future relationships?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got like a whiteboard right here over my desk, and I've got like just little notes and things I've written down. And there are things I've written down while like listening to Hacking Your ADHD or watching How to ADHD. And I've got like the, what is it? The Matrix, or with the
Eisenhower Matrix.
With the important versus urgency. Mm-hmm. I've got that. I've got, just like a little idea I had that I wrote, just turn impulse spending into debt payments to work on my financial situation. And then just a whole mess of sticky notes with ideas. That's
great. Just the idea of putting things that you want to be thinking about in sight, so it stays in mind, is great. Yeah.
And with future relationships, I definitely plan on like sitting down and making a list of like what my needs in a relationship are, and like what I'm hoping for, what my goals are in a relationship. And then also finding out, whoever the relationship is with, finding out what theirs are as well, and maintaining that constant communication and constant putting in effort and shaking things up to avoid that getting bored thing.
I think the more you know yourself, the more you can, kind of what you need in a relationship. And I mean, just think about this idea that, yeah, you can have needs in a relationship and communicate them, and that's okay.
I never used to do that. Like, I would never communicate my needs because I was like, oh, well, I deserve not to have my needs met because I have screwed up so bad all the time. So yeah, and it all compounds, and just doing a little bit of it and keeping on doing it, it just gets bigger and bigger, and it gets worse and worse until things inevitably end badly.
Well, I think there's one thing that we can know for sure, that ADHD colors our life in some of the most interesting ways.
That it does.
Jordan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I guess just those big themes is, avoid that self-judgment and, give yourself a break.
And if people want to get some ink from you, where could they go?
You can find me on Instagram at jordan.oni. It's ONI, like the Japanese mythical creature. And or you can email me directly at jordanoni.booking@gmail.com.
Awesome. And we'll get links to that on the show notes for this episode, which you could find at adhdrewired.com/. Check your podcast player to see what episode number this is, and then just put that episode number at the end of that. I always like have this commentary of like, other podcasts. I'm like, I'm not even going to try. That's just this is how I roll, is that it'll always be whatever episode number it is. And I'm not going to know it until we're releasing the episode. So links will be there. Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and with our listeners, and keep on keeping on. You're doing good things.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is adhdrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at adhdrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, adhdrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at adhdrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.